My daughter demanded that I pay her husband's debt. So I disappeared without warning. I need the money tomorrow, my daughter ordered, handing me her husband's $500,000 debt. And don't be late, he added. I just smiled. Okay. 4 hours later, I was at the airport. When they arrived to collect the money, they found the door locked and a box waiting on the porch. Inside was a note that read, "Betrayal, revenge, justice. It begins." The doorbell had rung 3 times that evening, sharp, impatient, and familiar. I set down my bourbon and quarterly reports. I already knew who it was. Through the study window, I spotted their white Tesla gleaming under the security lights. Emily only rang like that when she needed money. I walked through the marble foyer, past family photos that now felt like relics from a different life. Emily at 5, missing her front teeth. Emily at 18, in her cap and gown. Emily at 28, on her wedding day. Each photo now mocked me, a timeline of my own blind faith. When I opened the door, Emily smiled that same polished, emotionless smile, the one that never reached her eyes. Brandon stood behind her, glued to his phone, scrolling like a man monitoring stock prices. "Daddy," Emily threw her arms around me. The hug lingered just a second too long, rehearsed, not real. Brandon brushed past without a word, his designer shoes tapping against the marble as he claimed my leather chair. My chair. I followed them into the living room. Emily nervously adjusted the straps of her $5,000 handbag, another gift from me. Brandon was already spreading papers across the coffee table like a boardroom executive. "Can I get you anything? Water? Wine?" I asked politely, though I felt nothing of the sort. "Let's cut to the chase, Rob," Brandon said, without looking up. Rob, not Robert, not Mr. Mitchell. I tightened my grip on the glass and silently counted backward from 10, an anger management trick that had long lost its power. "Daddy," Emily began, her voice slipping into that practiced softness. "You know we wouldn't come unless it was important. You've always said family comes first, and we're family. What happened to the investment property in Round Rock?" I asked evenly. Brandon finally looked up, his face unreadable. "Market correction. Temporary setback. But that's not why we're here." Emily's wedding ring, my mother's ring, spun nervously around her finger. She'd been doing that since childhood, every time she lied. "Brandon's working on a new venture," she said. "A tech startup. Revolutionary. Huge potential." "How much?" I cut in. The clock in the corner ticked 3 times before Brandon finally said it. 500,000. We'll need it in our account by noon tomorrow." The room tilted slightly. My familiar migraine pulsed behind my left eye. "500,000. I repeated slowly. "Daddy, we wouldn't ask if we had another choice," Emily pleaded. "The mortgage, the kids' school, everything's so expensive." I almost laughed. I already paid their kids' tuition directly, $15,000 per child per semester, and had covered the down payment on their Westlake home. That one-time help had already cost me $200,000. Brandon rose, walked to my bar, and poured himself a drink, my 25-year-old Macallan, without asking. "These aren't bank people we owe," he said casually. "They're serious individuals. Would hate to see your reputation at the country club or the dealerships take a hit." The threat hung in the air, thick as his cologne. My blood pressure spiked. The migraine bloomed behind my eye like a hammer. I gripped the mantle for balance. "Daddy, you look pale," Emily said, her tone more calculating than concerned. And then she said it, the line that cut deeper than any threat. "If Mom were still alive, she'd be ashamed of how you're treating us." I froze. She knew exactly what she was doing. Margaret and I had divorced a decade ago, but Emily still weaponized her memory whenever it suited her. Never mind that Margaret was alive and well in Houston with her new husband, or that she had warned me about Emily's manipulation long ago. "Your mother," I said slowly, "would have told you to get jobs." Brandon chuckled, swirling my scotch like he owned it. "Jobs? I'm an entrepreneur, Rob." I smiled faintly, the kind that hides thunder, because in 4 hours, I'd be on a plane. And by the time they came back looking for their money, all they'd find was that box, and a message that would mark the beginning of their reckoning. "I create jobs," Brandon said proudly. 3 failed startups in 5 years. a cryptocurrency disaster I'd warned him about last Christmas, and a consulting firm that never actually consulted anyone. I'd funded them all, every one of his delusions of grandeur, and watched my money evaporate with each new vision. You missed Sophie's recital last month, Emily interrupted, switching tactics. Her voice trembled, rehearsed. And Max's soccer tournament. But you always have time for your quarterly reports. Those reports, I thought, were the reason their children could attend private school. The reason their Tesla stayed charged. The reason their Westlake address remained respectable. But I didn't say that. Instead, I watched as Emily's mascara ran down her cheeks in two perfect streams. She'd practiced this performance. Let me understand, I said finally, straightening despite the migraine pounding behind my eye. You need $500,000 by noon tomorrow. For what exactly? Brandon and Emily exchanged a look. That silent, wordless communication married couples perfect through years of coordinated deceit. Brandon set his glass down, returned to the coffee table, and began shuffling papers like a man handling poker chips. Real estate opportunity, he said. Time sensitive. We can't miss this window. You just told me you lost money on real estate in Round Rock, I reminded him. That was different, he snapped, gripping the documents until his knuckles turned white. This is, he hesitated, cryptocurrency. A sure thing. There it was. The same mistake that had cost them $200,000 8 months ago. My left hand trembled slightly, a new quirk in my 60s. I shoved it into my pocket. Emily's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly, typed something, then placed it face down. Daddy, we've supported you through so much, she began. When you and Mom divorced, who stood by you? When the economy crashed in 2020, who helped you keep the dealerships running? You were in Cabo that entire summer, I reminded her, posting about it every day on Instagram. That's not fair, she snapped. The wedding, I said evenly. $100,000. The house down payment, $200,000. Brandon's first startup, $150,000. The second, $80,000. The third, that's ancient history, Brandon interrupted, now standing, trying to loom over me. We're talking about our future, your grandchildren's future, the same grandchildren whose tuition I pay directly to St. Andrews, I said quietly. Emily stood too, clutching her phone like a weapon. She set down a framed photo, one of us at SeaWorld when she was 7. Her smile, then, had been real. Now was a prop. These aren't just debts, Rob, Brandon said, stepping closer. I could see the small scar above his left eyebrow. These are obligations. Serious people are involved. If we don't deliver by tomorrow noon, things could get complicated. For everyone. He let the words hang. Why reputation? The dealerships, the country club. Are you threatening me? I asked softly, in my own home. We're just being honest about reality, Emily said, though her voice wavered. She'd never seen me this calm, or this controlled. Daddy, please, she said. We need this by tomorrow noon. It's not negotiable. The room felt smaller. My migraine throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Brandon's cologne filled the air, thick and suffocating. Emily's makeup had smeared into something almost theatrical. I looked at them both, my daughter, now a stranger, and her husband, a parasite wearing confidence like cologne. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times. Outside, suburban Austin carried on, quiet, unaware, while my family imploded inside. Fine, I said at last. The word came out flat, final. Tomorrow. Now leave. Emily mistook exhaustion for surrender. She rushed forward, arms open for a hug. I stepped back. Her arms fell empty. Brandon extended his hand, gripping mine too hard, mistaking arrogance for strength. We knew you'd understand, Emily said brightly, gathering her designer bag and that stage photo. Family first, right, Daddy? They walked out without another word. Brandon's hand on her lower back, guiding her like a prize he'd just won. Through the window, I watched their white Tesla disappear down Westlake Drive. Exactly 5 minutes later, I made the first call. James Walker answered on the second ring. 25 years of friendship and legal counsel had taught him my rhythms. I never called after 9 unless something was deeply wrong. They finally crossed the line, didn't they? His voice carried no surprise. Only resignation. Noon tomorrow, I said. They think I'm an ATM with a withdrawal limit. They've overplayed their hand, he replied. House transfer paperwork's already filed. They just don't know it yet. Remember, Emily's name was never on that deed. You made sure of that. What about Margaret? I asked, walking through my home, now seeing it differently. Not as a house, but as a stage for tonight's final act. She's expecting your call, James said. Says it's about time you stopped enabling them. I hung up and walked to my office. The migraine had shifted, no longer pain, but cold precision. My laptop was open to an email confirmation from 3 weeks ago. Villa Las Palmas, Costa Rica. March 17th through April 17th. Reservation confirmed. The retirement planning trip would now serve a new purpose. I called American Airlines, moved my flight to 6:45 a.m. First class. One seat. The home safe opened with a code no one else knew. Inside, 2 decades of records. Every check, wire, and loan. Brandon's signed agreement from 2023. His promise that this would be the last time. Emily's Instagram posts, printed and dated. Shopping sprees, luxury dinners, weekend getaways. Their life, a struggle. In the garage, I found an old Amazon box. Plain. Perfect. Inside, I placed 3 folders. The deed to their house. Every loan record. $847,000 over 8 years. Legal notices James had prepared months ago, just in case. At the bottom, a USB drive with tonight's security footage. Emily's fake tears, Brandon's threats, every manipulative word. On top, a note. You wanted it tomorrow. Here's what you're really getting. Packing took half an hour. 2 suitcases, tropical clothes, documents, medication. I emailed Jake, my dealership manager. Family emergency. You're in charge. Details to follow. Before leaving, I paused in the hallway. The family portrait from 5 years ago, Laguna Gloria. Emily's smile looked genuine. Or maybe I'd only wanted to believe it was. I took it down, flipped it backward, and rehung it, blank canvas side out. It looked more honest that way. In my bedroom, I removed my University of Texas ring, the one Emily used to play with as a child. It went into the box with everything else. The migraine was gone, replaced by anticipation. 3 new texts from Emily. 2 missed calls from Brandon. I deleted them all without reading. My final call was to Margaret. She answered immediately. Robert, James told me. Are you really doing this? Should have done it years ago. She's our daughter, she said softly. There was sadness in her voice, not judgment. She's not the daughter we raised anymore, I replied. No, she's not, Margaret admitted. Costa Rica, you'll be safe there. Jake can handle the dealerships. The lawyers can handle the rest. She'll try to find me. Let her try, I said. By the time she figures out what's in that box, I'll be drinking coffee on the beach, deciding whether to ever come back. We hung up without sentiment. Margaret understood. Mothers always do. At 11:30 p.m., I stood in the dark kitchen, drinking water, studying the refrigerator, covered with my grandchildren's drawings. Stick figures labeled Grandpa and me fishing at Lake Travis. A crayon sketch of my dealership, Grandpa's work. I carefully removed the fishing picture, folded it, and tucked it into my wallet. They weren't to blame for their parents' greed. The box sat waiting on the porch, centered under the doorbell camera. Tomorrow, it would capture their faces, expecting money and finding truth instead. The alarm was set for 4:30 a.m. 6 hours until my new life began. 6.5 until there's unraveled. At exactly 4:30, the alarm cut through the dark. No snooze. No hesitation. 32 years of early mornings at the dealership had trained me well. The coffee maker hummed to life. Colombian dark roast, the kind Emily always said was too strong. The mug warmed my hands. An old anniversary gift from her back when she remembered things like that. Outside, Austin's skyline began to glow, one building at a time. I moved through the house deliberately, documenting each room like a detective. The master bedroom still held Margaret's mother's portrait, the one Emily always wanted but never earned. Her old room, now my office, still displayed trophies, state debate champion, National Honor Society. The daughter I'd raised versus the stranger who demanded $500,000. The pool shimmered in the pre-dawn light. I taught her to swim there when she was 4. Last July, Brandon had fallen and drunk, ruining a $6,000 watch. I replaced it without a word. The Bentley purred in the garage. I chose it over the Tesla. That car carried too many of Brandon's fingerprints. The streets of Westlake Hills were quiet. Garbage trucks rumbled past. I drove by Emily's neighborhood. The houses were dark, peaceful. They were sleeping, dreaming, perhaps, of how to spend my money. The radio played Take It Easy by the Eagles. I smiled at the irony. By the time I reached downtown, the city looked different, stripped, silent. A stage being dismantled after its final act. At 5:30 a.m., I walked into the Frostbank Tower. James was waiting in the conference room, documents spread across the mahogany table with surgical precision. A box of Krispy Kreme donuts sat between us, our tradition since 1999. "You look rested," he said, sliding the papers toward me. "For the first time in months," I replied. And as I signed, I realized this wasn't escape. It was justice that I signed the papers using my father's old fountain pen, the one Emily never knew existed. "Limited scope, I see," James remarked, scanning the document. 60-day expiration. Only property transfers and financial restructuring. Can't have you selling her organs after all. His attempt at humor fell flat. We both knew this wasn't revenge. It was necessary surgery. Sophia laid out the property documents with her usual precision. "The timing is interesting, Mr. Mitchell. The transfer was executed yesterday at 4 p.m., 3 hours before they came to your house. Technically, Emily's house has been yours since she signed those papers in 2020. She never read past page 2. The irony was perfect. While Emily had been driving to demand $500,000, she'd already lost her greatest symbol of wealth, the house she flaunted online as proof of her success. "The financial lockdown?" I asked. "Executed at midnight," Sophia replied. "Joint accounts frozen. Credit cards under your name suspended. Children's tuition remains on autopay through December. We're not punishing them." James opened another folder, thicker than the rest. "The nuclear option," he said. Inside were printed transcripts of Emily's messages to her friends, calling me a walking ATM and too pathetic to say no. There was also Brandon's 2023 promissory note, swearing that last time was truly the last time. A USB drive held security footage of last night's visit, their entire performance captured in high definition. "The prenup Brandon signed," James continued, "includes a gambling addiction clause. Page 47, subsection 3. He doesn't know. It was slipped in after his lawyer showed up to the signing drunk at 2 p.m. Sophia hesitated. "Mr. Mitchell, this is remarkably thorough. 5 years of preparation," I said quietly. "I just hoped I'd never need it." James produced a small Amazon box identical to the one waiting on my porch. "Insurance. If she doesn't find yours, this one gets delivered to her office Monday, along with these." He revealed a set of photographs. Brandon at a casino last week. The timestamp clear, the losses written on his face. "Does Margaret know?" I asked. "She's known for months," James said. "Help document everything. She's as tired of enabling Emily as you are." The Costa Rica property? Fully protected, held through the Cayman entity. Even if Emily gets ambitious with lawyers, she can't touch it. I signed the last document, Emily's trust fund termination. My hand trembled slightly. 20 years of planning for her future dissolved with one signature. James noticed. "Bourbon," he offered. "No," I said. "I'll need a clear head for the flight." At 6 a.m., I shook James's hand. His grip carried the weight of understanding and finality. As the elevator descended, each floor felt like another layer peeling away from my old life. The valet had my Bentley running. I handed him a $100 bill and an envelope. "Jake Martinez will pick this up Monday," I said. He nodded, puzzled but polite. Driving toward the airport, I watched the sunrise wash Austin's skyline in gold. My phone buzzed, Emily calling. I let it ring. It would be the last time I'd hear that ringtone without choosing to answer. Highway 71 stretched ahead, the familiar route now feeling like a farewell tour. I passed Manuel's taco truck at Riverside, open as always. Normally, I'd stop for breakfast. Not today. NPR droned in the background about a business expansion. My dealership group, ironically, they wouldn't be mine much longer. Emily called 3 more times. Then Brandon once. Each ring sounded like a countdown. 10 years ago, I'd have answered immediately, worried about the grandkids. Now I knew better. Those calls weren't about family. They were about entitlement. I mentally ran through my checklist. Jake had managed Saturdays for 5 years. He'd do fine. Property management had 6 months prepaid. Tuition through December was secured. The grandchildren wouldn't pay for their parents' mistakes. Everything else was no longer my concern. By the time I reached Austin Bergstrom's South Terminal, the morning mist was lifting. "Early flight, Mr. Mitchell?" Tommy, the valet, asked. "Change of plans," I replied, handing him the keys and another envelope. "Jake Martinez will pick it up Monday. Info's inside." "Everything all right, sir?" "Better than it's been in years." I didn't look back at the Bentley. That car had carried too many false promises. Emily to her wedding, Brandon to his bars, me to their endless demands. Let Jake decide its fate. At check-in, Michelle smiled. "Costa Rica today, Mr. Mitchell. 6:45 to San Jose." "That's right," I said. 2 bags checked, everything I needed. I kept my carry-on, documents, meds, laptop, and a few photographs I couldn't leave behind. As she handed back my passport, I gave her a sealed envelope. "A favor. Someone might come asking for this later, Emily Carter. She'll be upset. Just verify her ID. There's a key inside to a storage unit. She'll understand. Or maybe she wouldn't. Inside that unit were 20 years of her childhood, things she'd never care to collect. Let her decide what mattered more, memories or money." TSA pre-check was quick. Familiar nods from the agents. "Where to today, Mr. Mitchell?" one asked. "Somewhere warmer." "Business or pleasure?" "Neither." "Personal." Past security, I stopped at Austin Java by gate 14. "The usual?" the barista asked. "Make it a large," I said. "Special occasion." "You could say that." I sat by the window, coffee warming my hands. My phone screen glowed, 7 missed calls from Emily, 3 from Brandon, a dozen texts, 2 voicemails. The last text caught my eye. "Dad, call me back. Having weird dreams about money." I typed. Dreams and reality aren't the same thing. Deleted it. Typed again. Checked the porch. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "Ask James Walker." Then deleted it. Instead, I powered off the phone, removed the SIM card, and dropped both into the trash. Let someone else inherit those calls. First-class passengers for Flight 447 to San Jose, Costa Rica, now boarding. The gate agent smiled as she scanned my pass. The jet bridge stretched ahead. Each step felt lighter. I took my seat, C2A, window left, and accepted the champagne. Unusual for 7 a.m., but perfect for this moment. Other passengers filed in. A honeymoon couple, a frantic businessman, an elderly woman knitting yellow yarn. For a moment, it all felt like echoes from my past life. Then, "Excuse me," a familiar voice said. I froze. Margaret stood in the aisle, composed as ever, luggage in hand. She took seat 2B, close enough to talk, far enough to stay safe. "James called," she said. "Thought you might need backup. It's not your fight anymore." "Hasn't been for 10 years, she said softly. "But she's still my daughter. Someone should be there when she lands." There. I bought the condo next door 6 months ago. James found it, handled everything. "I've been planning this as long as you have." The captain's voice interrupted. Final boarding. My chest tightened. "Emily? Brandon?" "No, just a late businessman." "Did you tell her?" I asked. "Tell her what?" Margaret said. That her father finally stopped enabling her? That her husband's a parasite? That she became everything we swore she wouldn't? "No, Robert. She'll figure it out herself." Today, actually. The doors sealed shut. Engines roared. Austin shrank beneath us. Somewhere below, Emily's alarm was going off. In 4 hours, she'd reach my empty house. In 5, she'd find a box. In 6, my old life would no longer exist. When a flight attendant offered breakfast, I smiled faintly. "Business or pleasure?" she asked. "Neither," I said. "Justice." Margaret laughed quietly. "That's the Robert the first married. Welcome back." By noon, The exact time Emily expected $500,000. I was eating lunch above the Caribbean. Margaret read beside me. We were finally free from the daughter we'd lost long before the money ran out. 3 days later, James sent me the security footage. I watched it from my Costa Rica balcony, the ocean waves oddly soothing against the chaos I'd left behind. At 12 p.m., right as I was ordering ceviche, the first alert arrived. Your transaction has been completed. The house transfer official. Emily, meanwhile, was still living in her illusion. Starbucks at 11:47 a.m., a $7 latte on the credit card I'd canceled at midnight. Her final purchase on my dime. At 12:15, Mrs. Chun, my neighbor of 15 years, called James. Mr. Walker, she said in her careful English, they are here. Emily and the gambling man. They don't know I'm watching. The cameras picked up at 12 hours, 15 minutes, and 23 seconds. And the reckoning began. Emily's white Mercedes pulled in my driveway with the confidence of someone coming to collect their allowance. Brandon checked his phone. Later, James would tell me he was following basketball scores, probably setting up his next bet. With my money, Emily applied lipstick in the mirror, the same deep red she'd worn when she asked for her first car at 16, her wedding down payment at 28, and her latest demand, $500,000 at 35. They walked up to my door like they owned it. Brandon carried an empty Hermes briefcase, $12,000 retail, bought with a loan I'd given him in January. Empty now, waiting for cash that would never come. Emily rang the doorbell at 12:16 p.m. Just once. Not the impatient triple press she'd used yesterday. 10 seconds passed before she rang again, longer this time. I knew her patterns too well. Brandon peered through the kitchen window. His car's gone, Emily said loudly enough for Mrs. Chan next door to hear. He's got 5 cars, Brandon muttered dismissively. The lights are on timers, Emily observed. Maybe he went to the bank. You said noon. It's barely past. At 12:18, they tried the door. Emily's keys scraped the lock, but it wouldn't open. James's paralegal had changed them at 7 a.m., 3 hours after I'd left for the airport. The confusion on Emily's face was almost worth decades of manipulation. Then Brandon noticed the box. Just an Amazon package on the porch table, except my daughter's name was written across the top in thick black Sharpie. She opened it casually, probably expecting a gift or an apology. The first paper she pulled out was the deed to her house. Her face changed like a time-lapse of fruit rotting, confusion to disbelief to horror in under 3 seconds. She dropped it. Brandon snatched it midair, scanning the title. What do you mean it's in his name? Brandon's voice carried all the way to Mrs. Chen's yard. Next came the spreadsheet. Every payment, every loan, every gift, meticulously documented. Total, $1.3 million over 8 years, not including the house. Her hands trembled as she reached the bottom line. Then came the photographs. Brandon at the Palms Casino last Tuesday, time-stamped his losses written on his face. And the promissory note he'd signed swearing December's money was the last time. Finally, Emily's own text messages, printed and highlighted. Dad's too pathetic to say no. He'll cave. I deserve this money more than he does. At 12:23, her phone buzzed. One declined transaction after another. Chase, Amex, Nordstrom, all in my name, all canceled at midnight. Brandon made a call. His bookie, James found out later. The man told him that credit extensions require collateral, not promises. Emily sat on the porch steps, her designer dress crumpled against the concrete I'd resurfaced last summer. At 12:25, she found a USB drive. She plugged it into her phone with shaking hands. Her own voice played back through the tiny speaker. Just take whatever he gives you. He's too pathetic to say no. Then Brandon's voice followed. These aren't bank people, Rob. They're serious individuals. The last document in the box was the prenup, with the gambling clause circled in red. Immediate forfeiture of marital assets if debts exceed $50,000. Brandon had passed that mark 3 years ago. He hurled his Hermes briefcase in my front door. The handle snapped off, leather scattering across the porch. Emily sobbed, not the polished, performative kind she'd used before, but raw, broken sounds of someone realizing the game was over. Mrs. Chun, bless her, emerged from her garden holding her phone like a weapon. "I'm calling the police if you don't leave. This is my father's house." Emily screamed. "Not anymore," Mrs. Chun replied. "Mr. Mitchell sent me the transfer notice this morning. You're trespassing." Brandon stormed off, leaving Emily to gather the scattered papers, her fortune now reduced to litter. At 12:30, I was sitting at a beachside restaurant watching the ocean. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something. "A graduation?" he guessed. "Yes," I said. "My own." By Monday, James had the full epilogue. Emily returned Sunday morning with a locksmith, who refused the job after checking ownership records. She tried climbing the fence until security arrived. Police issued a trespass warning. Brandon never came back. He moved to Dallas with his brother. Divorce papers filed. 3 days later, on my balcony in Costa Rica, Margaret reading beside me, James asked if I wanted to see the footage. "No," I said, watching pelicans die for fish. The screaming I'd heard for 5 years was finally, blessedly, silent. But James sent the parking garage footage anyway. Their Mercedes screeched into the underground lot of Emily's condo building. Even without sound, Brandon's rage was unmistakable. He slammed the door so hard the alarm blared. Emily chased him into the elevator, clutching those documents like evidence in a murder trial. The murder of their own delusions. The elevator's audio, somehow obtained by James's paralegals, caught their final argument. "You said it was commercial real estate." Emily screamed. "It was." Brandon snapped. "The casino was just stress relief." Then the sound of papers hitting flesh. The elevator dinged. Doors closed on Emily sobbing. By 7:30, she'd started an Instagram live that would become Austin gossip legend. James's team screenshotted everything before she deleted it. There she was, mascara-streaked, wine glass trembling, holding up the house deed. When someone you trust betrays you. Brandon was visible in the background, throwing clothes into a suitcase. The glass flew from her hand, shattering their wedding photo. Stream ended. 47 people watched Emily Carter, social butterfly of Westlake, self-destruct in real time. 3 of them work for my dealership. They sent the footage to James. Monday morning, Brandon's mother left a voicemail. "Mr. Mitchell, Brandon's been missing since Saturday night. Emily says you've kidnapped him. I know that's crazy, but do you know where my son is?" I didn't, but I knew where he'd been, calling every contact he'd ever had, begging for money. Each call shorter than the last. Emily, meanwhile, was Googling her way through denial. Can father take back gifted house, Texas? How to break power of attorney. Cheap divorce attorney. No money down. The last one stung more than I expected. Not because she was leaving Brandon, but because she immediately went looking for someone else to fund it. At 10 p.m., Rachel, her best friend since college, called Margaret. Emily had finally watched the entire USB. 5 years of recordings. Birthdays. Holidays. Dinners. Emily calling me a walking ATM. Brandon bragging about bleeding the old man dry. Mock toast to good old dad, the family bank. Rachel said Emily played it 3 times. At 10:17, her remaining cards began to decline. Even her Starbucks account was frozen. By 11 o'clock, she was posting on Facebook, "Betrayed by blood. When your father chooses money over family." Selling designer bags. Serious inquiries only. The comments came fast. "Didn't you just post from Cabo last week? Thought your dad bought you everything." While her world crumbled, Margaret and I sat on a beach deck playing poker. A local guitarist strummed nearby. I tipped him $100 to play Take It Easy by the Eagles. Margaret laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "You're terrible at poker," she said, collecting my chips. I smiled. "Not anymore. I'm free," I told James. And for the first time in years, I meant it. At 11:45 p.m., Mrs. Chun called again. Emily had returned. She was sitting in her white Mercedes, parked in my driveway, engine off. She didn't try to break in, didn't yell, didn't knock. She just sat there, staring at the dark windows, maybe hoping they'd suddenly light up with forgiveness. She stayed for an hour. When she finally drove away at 1 a.m., Mrs. Chun said she looked different, like she'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. By midnight, March 16th, Emily had lost access to $2.3 million in assets. She discovered $500,000 in hidden debts, realized Brandon had gambled away their savings, learned she'd never actually own her home, and that her mother had known everything for months. James asked if I felt guilty about the recordings. I told him the truth. The only thing I regretted was not starting them sooner. Sunday, March 17th. Security footage showed Emily standing outside my office building for nearly 2 hours. She pressed the intercom again and again, like a child jabbing an elevator button, hoping persistence could change reality. She called employees from a stolen company directory. Jake blocked her after the third attempt. The others just ignored her. By noon, she'd moved on to Austin Bergstrom International Airport, the same terminal where I'd once dropped her off for college visits, where I'd greeted her after her honeymoon. Now, she was there as a detective, trying to track me down. TSA wouldn't release information. American Airlines told her she'd need a warrant. When she claimed it was a family emergency, they checked the system. The agent told her the passenger specifically requested no contact. James later got the footage, Emily's face crumbling when she heard those words. Her Uber receipts that afternoon traced a map of desperation across Austin. Robert's Golf Club, membership revoked. Morton Steakhouse, where we'd celebrated every deal, even my old barber shop on South Congress. It was closed, but she still stood outside, peering in through the window, as if my reflection might appear in the glass. Monday, March 18th, became her crash course in legal reality. She met with 4 law firms. For identical consultations. For quiet rejections. The documents are ironclad, said the first. You'll need a $10,000 retainer, said the second. Do you have access to funds? Asked the third. The fourth simply shook his head. By 3 p.m., she'd stormed into my flagship dealership on Research Boulevard. The confrontation made it onto employee social media. She accused Jake Martinez, a 6'4" former Marine, of kidnapping, elder abuse, and theft. He stayed calm as she screamed. When she threw her coffee at the glass door, customers started recording. The brown stain stayed there for 3 days. Jake left it untouched, out of principle. At 5 p.m., Brandon's mother left another voicemail, her voice trembling. Mr. Mitchell, Brandon's been missing since Saturday night. Emily says you've kidnapped him. I know that's crazy, but do you know where my son is? Tuesday, March 19th. The real creditors arrived, not bankers in cheap suits, but 2 men in Italian leather, knocking politely, speaking softly. They didn't threaten. They didn't need to. They left behind a simple business card with only a phone number. Emily called Brandon 47 times. His phone had been off since Saturday. That afternoon, her Instagram stories, screenshotted by her sorority sisters, told the rest. The pawn shop tour. Designer bags worth $30,000, sold for $8,000 cash. Jewelry worth $50,000, sold for $15,000. Brandon's abandoned watches, once worth $40,000, gone for $12,000. Still, they were $465,000 short of what they owed. That evening, Margaret took Emily's call. She recorded it, legally. She knew I'd want to hear it eventually. Mom, did you know about Brandon's gambling? Emily's voice was small. 6 months ago? Why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? Margaret asked. Silence. I need money. So did I, Margaret replied. You told me during the divorce to be independent. The call ended with Emily's sobs, cut short when Margaret hung up. Wednesday, March 20th. Emily showed up at James's office wearing the same designer dress from her Cabo Instagram post just a week before. The irony wasn't lost on him. He noted it in his report. Same conference room where I'd signed the papers. Same chair where Brandon had spun his lies. James walked her through everything, calm, methodical, precise. The power of attorney, signed before her so-called emergency. The house deed trail, her 2020 signature, never having read past page 2. Gift tax records, proving every cent had been a gift, not a loan. Brandon's promissory note, his signature bold and undeniable. He's my father, Emily said, her voice cracking. He has to help me. Legally, he doesn't, James replied. What about the grandchildren? The trust funds? In their names only, James said. Untouchable until they turn 18. This is elder abuse, she snapped. He's 62, James said softly. Sound mind. Left voluntarily. Then, by mistake, James left Brandon's credit report open on his tablet. Emily saw everything. $500,000 in gambling debts. $200,000 in personal loans. $100,000 in hidden credit cards. Even an attempted second mortgage on the house, denied because she didn't actually own it. Finally, James slid an envelope across the table. Mr. Mitchell authorized one final gift, he said quietly. Inside was a $10,000 cashier's check and a note in my handwriting. For fresh start, Dad. Emily tore it in half. The pieces drifted to the carpet like dead leaves. She immediately asked if there was another check. There wasn't. There never would be. Meanwhile, I was in Costa Rica, learning Spanish from local children on the beach. They called me Roberto El Rico, laughing as I mispronounced their words. My blood pressure had dropped 20 points. I was sleeping 8 hours a night. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about Emily. That night, James called. She left my office at noon, he said. Security footage shows her sitting in the lobby until closing. She asked the guard if you ever talked about her. He told her yes, said you spoke fondly. She said thank you, James added quietly, and left. That night, I dreamed of teaching Emily to ride her bike again. Only this time, when I let go, she kept pedaling away until she disappeared. April 3rd, the headline in the Austin American-Statesman read, Local businessman missing after financial scandal. Brandon Carter, 38. Missing since March 19th. No evidence of foul play. His car found in long-term parking at the airport. A ticket to Vegas, purchased but never used. 2 days later, the creditors came back to Emily's condo. More insistent this time. They left behind a photo. Brandon at the casino in February. Poker chips scattered, owing $500,000. Emily filed for a restraining order. The judge asked about the debt. Request denied. Her garage sale that weekend became neighborhood entertainment. The Facebook posts, forwarded to James by his investigator, painted a painful picture. Moving sale. Everything must go. The furniture that once hosted charity galas. Brandon's custom golf clubs, sold for $200. Wedding china, $50 for the full set. Her wedding dress, preserve in acid-free tissue, but still no buyers. A neighbor commented, sad. A year ago, she hosted a $50,000 charity gala here. By mid-April, Emily had applied for 47 jobs around Austin. Interior design firms, retail stores, anything. Too long a career gap for one, overqualified for another. Finally, Nordstrom hired her. The same store where she'd once spent thousands every month. Starting pay, $15 an hour, plus commission. The universe has a sharp sense of irony. On April 15th, an eviction notice appeared on her condo door. 3 months behind on the mortgage. Brandon had managed the finances and never mentioned the mounting debt. $13,500 owed. May 15th deadline to vacate. She discovered it coming home from her first day at Nordstrom, still wearing the employee name tag she used to ignore on others. The divorce filing on April 18th read, like a business contract dissolving a failed partnership. Abandonment was listed as the cause. Brandon needed to be served, but his whereabouts were unknown. The judge approved publication notices in 3 local newspapers. $500 Emily didn't have to spare. She used her Nordstrom employee discount to buy a suit for court. The first piece of clothing she'd purchased with her own earned money in 7 years. While Emily was sifting through the ashes of her old life, I was building something entirely new in Costa Rica. My days found a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. I woke with the sunrise and the howler monkeys. Drank coffee overlooking the Pacific. Swam in water so clear I could see my own reflection beneath the surface. Lunches were at Manuel's Beach Bar, where no one cared about dealerships, money, or daughters. The locals call me Roberto El Rico, Robert the Rich, but not for my wealth. I taught their kids English in exchange for Spanish lessons. Their parents invited me to dinner tables where talk was about weather, fishing, and football, not investments or opportunities. They never asked for anything except the salt. Margaret had taken up painting, awful seascapes that made us laugh until tears came. We hadn't laughed like that since Emily turned 16, when she started seeing us as resources instead of parents. It wasn't romantic anymore. That had died years ago. But it was peaceful, like two shipwreck survivors sharing the same lifeboat. My doctor in San Jose was stunned. Blood pressure down 30 points. 20 pounds gone. 3 medications eliminated. What changed? He asked in his accented English. Everything, I told him. And nothing. I just stopped funding other people's lives and started living my own. Then, on April 25th, TMZ broke the story. Missing Texas businessman spotted in Mexico, Brandon Carter, working a Juarez car rental agency under a fake name. He looked thinner, older, wedding ring gone. Extradition wasn't likely. Civil debts rarely justified it. Emily commented under the article with just 2 words, good riddance. 2 days later, on April 27th, Emily finally used the airport storage key. Manuel told me what she found inside. Every childhood photo I'd ever saved, her grandmother's jewelry she thought was lost, and a $50,000 savings bond in her name, maturing in 1 year. Alongside, it was a handwritten note, asterisk for when you remember who you were before money mattered. Dad asterisk. On April 28th, James forwarded me an email from Emily. Her words were measured, careful. Mr. Walker, please tell my father I found the storage unit. I understand now. I'm sorry. I'm working at Nordstrom. I'm surviving. Maybe that's the lesson. Don't tell him I asked, but is he happy? When James asked how to respond, I told him on April 29th as I watched the sunset with Margaret beside me and a guitarist playing nearby. Tell her yes. Tell her I'm happy. And tell her the bond was her mother's idea. Anything else? Tell her I'll be here when she's ready to visit, but she pays her own way. That night, I watched Costa Rican families laughing together on the beach. 3 generations, no phones, no distractions. Poor by American standards, but rich in every way that mattered. Later, James said Emily texted back, "Thank you for telling me. Maybe Christmas if I save enough." It was the first time in 5 years she'd mentioned saving for anything. On April 30th, Manuel's band played at the beach bar. They dedicated a song to Roberto El Rico. It wasn't an Eagles cover this time. It was a folk song about a man who found treasure by giving everything away. Margaret translated with tears in her eyes. The song wasn't really about me, but about all of us expats, running from something, finding something else instead. That same evening, James called to say Emily had sold her Mercedes, bought a 10-year-old Honda, opened a savings account, and even posted on Instagram about the dignity of honest work. Should I keep monitoring her? He asked. No, I said. The lesson's been learned. The teaching's over. The learning, maybe it's just beginning. By May 5th, Emily had run out of time and options. The eviction notice had been taped to her condo door since April 15th. James said she tried everything, pleading with property managers, offering partial payments, even negotiating directly with the building owner. She never knew I'd sold that property to a REIT back in January, anticipating exactly this outcome. Security footage showed her renting the smallest U-Haul available. She loaded alone, 12 hours of backbreaking work. Mrs. Peterson, the same neighbor Emily had mocked for her noisy grandkids, offered help from her balcony. Emily refused out of pride. She struggled with the heavy leather couch she'd once bragged about buying with my money, dragging it inch by inch toward the truck while neighbors watched in silence. The storage unit she could afford fit everything, except her clothes and laptop. 1 month prepaid. Cheapest facility in Austin. Ironically, her unit sat right next to mine, the one with the bond. She walked past it daily, never realizing. Then came May 10th. A registered letter from Juarez. Brandon's handwriting. The postal worker later swore her hands were shaking when she signed for it. Emily, by the time you read this, I'll have a new name and a new life. The men looking for me won't find me. Don't try either. I'm sorry about your father's money, but you were the one who said he'd never cut you off. We both gambled. We both lost. The prenup your dad made me sign means you get nothing anyway. Consider us even. B. Her Nordstrom manager called James afterward, worried. Emily had missed 3 days of work. When she finally showed up, she'd lost 10 pounds and looked hollow. The manager nearly fired her, but Emily begged, actually begged for another chance. Promised perfect attendance. By May 15th, she was officially evicted. Her new address, a 400-square-foot studio above a taco shop on East Riverside, the same neighborhood she once called sketchy. The air conditioner rattled like dice in a cup. The shared laundry smelled of mildew. $700 a month. Cash only, no lease, no credit check. On May 16th, she started her second job. Night shifts at Denny's, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The same Denny's where she'd once caused a scene over cold eggs. Now she served drunk college kids and overworked nurses for $13 an hour plus tips. Her new life became mechanical. Wake at 5 a.m. Work Nordstrom 6 to 2. Sleep 3 to 10. Denny's 11 to 7. Repeat. Sundays were for laundry and cooking rice, beans, and discount chicken. Margaret visited on May 24th. That night, she called me, her voice soft but steady. Emily had hung one photo on her water-stained wall, our picture from her college graduation. The designer clothes were gone. Walmart basics instead. 20 pounds lighter, cheekbones sharp as guilt. Their conversation was brief but honest. I helped your father plan this, Margaret said. I know. Are you angry? I was. Now I'm just tired. The bond was my idea. Insurance for when you hit bottom. This is bottom. No, Margaret told her. Bottom is when you stop blaming everyone else. Memorial Day weekend arrived with the Texas heat. Emily worked a double at Nordstrom and then an overnight at Denny's. She made $300 in tips, the most money she'd touched since March. The security camera at Denny's caught her sitting in her Honda at 7:15 a.m., counting crumpled bills through tears. Not the manipulative kind she'd mastered for years, but something real, something clean. Later, she typed a message she never sent. Dad, I made $300 tonight. By myself. I know you'll never see this, but I wanted you to know. By early June, I was starting to understand. Emily had deleted her unsent text, but the phone company records still showed it existed. In Costa Rica, the rainy season had arrived. I'd begun teaching English at the local school as a volunteer. The kids called me Teacher Roberto. None of them knew about my past, my money, or my history. To them, I was just another man with chalk-stained hands and a soft accent. Margaret was painting again. Her landscapes were objectively terrible, but tourists bought them for $20 apiece, and she donated the proceeds to the school. We ate dinner together most nights. Rice, fish, and fried plantains. Simple food, honest food, better than any overpriced country club meal I'd ever paid for. James sent his final update. Emily's working 2 jobs, living in a studio, surviving. My reply was short. Stop monitoring her. She needs to do this alone now. May 31st, midnight. Emily tied on her Denny's apron and began another graveyard shift. The Memorial Day crowd was filtering in, loud, hungry, and half-drunk. She approached a table of rowdy fraternity boys, the kind Brandon used to party with. Welcome to Denny's. What can I get started for you? One of them squinted, recognition dawning. Wait, Emily? Emily Carter? From a country club? She didn't flinch. That's me, she said evenly. Now, what can I get you? Later, James told me that moment was the turning point when Emily stopped being my daughter and started becoming herself. By June, Austin's summer heat had set in, and Emily had found her rhythm. Customers at Nordstrom started asking for her by name. She'd become genuinely helpful, patient, grounded, even kind. At Denny's, the night shift nurses tipped her extra because she remembered their coffee orders by heart. No sugar for Beth, extra cream for Susan, decaf for Maria, who was trying to quit. Her Nordstrom coworker told James that Emily had dropped from a size 10 to a size 4, not from vanity, but from exhaustion. She spent her days walking retail floors, her nights carrying trays, her meals consisting of whatever she could afford. Her cheekbones were sharp, but her eyes finally held awareness. Sundays followed a quiet routine. She'd hit the laundromat at 6 a.m. when it was empty, then shop at the Asian market on North Lamar for cheap produce. Back home, she'd prep meals on a single working burner. And, for reasons she probably couldn't explain, she started visiting the library, reading financial literacy books, taking notes like a student trying to rebuild her own foundation. June 10th. Checking her mail in the apartment lobby, Emily found the usual bills, junk, offers for credit cards she no longer qualified for. Then, one envelope stood out, cream-colored, no return address, stamped from Costa Rica. Her hands trembled as she recognized my handwriting. She sat right there on the stairs and opened it. 3 handwritten pages. The same careful script I'd used for decades, on birthday cards, on checks, on every promise I'd ever made. The letter read, "Emily, I'm writing this from a beach in Costa Rica. There's a little girl here who reminds me of you at 7. Fearless, curious, demanding that the world bend to her will. The difference is, she's also grateful. I don't blame you for becoming who you became. I made you that way. Every time you cried, I wrote a check. Every time you demanded, I delivered. I thought I was loving you. I was crippling you. Your mother says you're working 2 jobs. Good. Work teaches lessons money never can. Every dollar you earn represents effort, sacrifice, time. It carries weight my gifts never did. I'm not coming back to the man I used to be. That man was just a checkbook with a heartbeat. But I might come back to meet the woman you're becoming. The storage key you found, that was your mother's idea. She said you'd need something to hope for. The bond matures in April 2026. By then, you'll either have learned to live without it, or you'll still be waiting for rescue. Either way, you'll have your answer about who you really are. I love you, Emily. I always have. But love without respect is just pity. Earn my respect, and more importantly, earn your own. P.S. Your grandmother will be proud of you. She was a waitress when she met Grandpa. I never told you that. I was ashamed then. Now I'm ashamed that I ever was. Emily carried that letter in her apron pocket for a week. Her co-worker said she'd sneak into the bathroom during breaks to read it, crying quietly, not with anger, but something deeper. She started talking to people differently, asking her co-workers about their families, their struggles, actually listening to their answers. She called Margaret one night. "Why didn't anyone tell me about Grandma?" she asked. Margaret's voice was calm. "You never asked about anyone's struggles, only their successes." "What else don't I know?" Emily asked softly. "Everything that matters," Margaret said. Her transformation showed up everywhere, even in her Nordstrom performance review. Emily has become our top associate. Customers trust her. She relates to people saving for something special. She understands sacrifice now. She was promoted to department lead, $18 an hour. The first promotion she'd ever earned, not been handed. On June 25th, Emily wrote back. It took 5 days and countless drafts. Margaret later shared parts of it with me. "Dad, I'm writing this at 3 a.m. between jobs. My feet hurt. My back aches. I've never been happier. Not happy like champagne and shopping. Happy like I earned this sandwich. Happy like customers asked for me by name. Happy like I paid my own rent. I was so angry when you left. How dare you abandon me? But now I see. You didn't abandon me. You freed me. Freed me from the person we both allowed me to become. Brandon's gone. Good riddance. He was my mirror, showing me my worst parts. We were parasites feeding on each other's entitlement. When the host disappeared, we starved. I don't want money anymore. That's not pride, it's growth. I'll use the bond when it matures, but not as a rescue fund. As seed money, for the life I'm building. Come back when you're ready. Not to save me, just to see me. The real me, the one buried under designer labels and expectations. P.S. I kept one thing from my old life, the photo of us at my graduation. You look so proud. I want to earn that look again. The letter reached me on July 2 ND during Independence Day week. Fitting, I thought. I read it on the beach while Margaret looked over my shoulder. She gets it, Margaret said quietly. Getting it and living it are 2 different things, I replied. How long does it take, she asked. How long did it take you? I said. She smiled faintly. I'm still changing. Exactly. That same week, June 30th, just before midnight, Emily began another Denny's shift. A regular customer, an older man who always sat alone, looked up from his menu. "You look lighter tonight," he said kindly. Somehow, unburdened. For the first time in years, Emily smiled. A real smile. "I'm learning to carry my own weight now, not to expect others to carry it for me." That night, an elderly man at Denny's left Emily a $20 tip on an $8 check. The note beside it read, "For your education fund, a fellow traveler." That small gesture sealed my decision. I would return in August, not to rescue her, not to test her, but simply to see who she was becoming, the woman she was learning to be when no one was paying her way. I landed at Austin Bergstrom Airport at 10 a.m., August 15th, 2025. Same gate I departed from in March. 5 months had passed, but felt like 5 years. Margaret stayed behind in Costa Rica. "This is your journey to finish," she'd said. And she was right. The rental car was modest, a compact sedan, not the luxury vehicle Robert Mitchell would have once demanded. I drove past my dealerships, thriving without me. Good. Past Emily's old condo, where a new family now lived. Their laughter drifted down from the balcony. They looked happy, uncomplicated, free of debt. I checked into a Hampton Inn instead of the Four Seasons. Another quiet victory. Comfort without excess. I called James. "I'm here." She doesn't know. No. I want to see her real life, not a performance. Nordstrom. She's there until 6. At 4 p.m., I stood in Nordstrom at Barton Creek Mall, watching from a distance. Emily knelt beside an elderly woman, adjusting a shoe strap with patience and care. The Emily I remembered would have called another associate to handle it. She looked different now, lean but strong, moving with purpose instead of entitlement. Her hair was tied back, her face bare and beautiful in a way I'd never seen before, honest. At 5:30, I approached like any customer. "Excuse me," I said. "I'm looking for comfortable walking shoes." She turned, froze, and whispered, "Dad?" "Hello, Emily." Neither of us moved. 5 months of silence, and change hung between us. Then she laughed, not bitterly, not defensively, just softly. "You're shopping at Nordstrom? You haven't bought your own clothes in 20 years. Things change." "Yes," she said. "They do." She couldn't leave the floor, so I stayed and played the role of a customer. We spoke quietly as she fitted shoes. "You look different," I said. "I am different. Poverty's an effective diet plan." "It's not poverty," I corrected. "It's reality." "Same thing when you've lived in fantasy," she replied. When she rang up the shoes, she applied her employee discount without asking, a small act of pride. "I get off at 6, she said. "Then Denny's at 11. Can we have dinner in between?" "I can't afford dinner out." "I'll cook." She hesitated, then gave me her address. "It's not what you used to." "Neither am I anymore," I said. At 6:30, I climbed the narrow stairs to her studio apartment. She'd changed into worn jeans and a t-shirt, both clean, clearly secondhand. The place was tiny but spotless. One chair, one stool. She gave me the chair. "It's not much," she started. "It's yours," I said. "That makes it everything." On the wall hung our old graduation photo. On the counter, my letter, creased, reread, treasured. A few financial planning books from the library sat beside it. I cooked pasta using what she had, simple, fresh ingredients. She watched quietly, the way she did when she was 10. "Mom says you're teaching in Costa Rica?" "Volunteering. English lessons for local kids. For free." The best things I've done lately have all been free. We ate at her small table. Plastic plates, mismatched forks. It was better than any country club dinner I'd ever had. "I hated you," she said suddenly. "I know. I mean really hated you. I wanted you dead. I know. How could you leave me with nothing? How could I leave you with everything? It was killing you. It was killing both of us," she said softly. Silence settled. Not uncomfortable, just necessary. At 9 p.m., she began getting ready for her night shift. I handed her an envelope. "This isn't a rescue," I said. "It's an investment." Inside was a $5,000 check and a contract. She frowned. "What's this?" "A business proposal. You'll work for me." "Not at the dealerships." "Something new." Financial literacy workshops for young adults. You know the cost of not knowing. I'm not qualified. You're uniquely qualified, I said. You've lived both sides, rich without understanding and poor with awareness. She read the contract carefully. Fair salary. No special treatment. Performance-based raises. This isn't charity. This is business. I told her. If you fail, you're fired. Daughter or not. And if I succeed, then we both succeed. At 10:30, she had to leave for Denny's. She hugged me. Really hugged me. No performance. No manipulation. Just connection. I'll call you tomorrow after I read the contract again. Read it 3 times, I said. That's another lesson. I'm learning. We both are. A month later, Emily accepted the position, but kept her Denny's shifts on weekends for 6 more months. Just in case, she'd said. Smart. Her first financial literacy class had 12 attendees. A year later, she was speaking at local colleges. 2 years later, she was designing curriculum for schools. When the bond matured, she never touched it, using it instead as a house down payment. The cash came from her own savings. Brandon never returned. I heard he married a wealthy widow in Cancun. The cycle repeated, but not our concern anymore. Thanksgiving 2025. Emily hosted dinner in her studio. Margaret brought side dishes. I brought wine. We sat on the floor around her coffee table. Emily raised her water glass. To family, she said. To lessons learned, added Margaret. And to starting over, I finished. We clinked our mismatched glasses, plastic and glass, imperfect but perfect. The fortune I'd spent my life building was nothing compared to the wealth in that tiny room. A daughter's respect, earned, not inherited. And the understanding that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to save themselves. Did you ever face something like this? Comment below. Asterisk if you like this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To watch the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching. Asterisk.